Hello, welcome back to the Orminators. I'm Chris Orr of the Orminators, and been locked inside the house for a little while. And so you can see here, my hair, for example, is starting to get pretty long and unruly. It's been literally a year since I've had it cut. I obviously haven't been in quarantine since then, but right around the time I was getting tired of it and decided I wanted to get it cut, we got locked inside. So, been doing a lot of stuff around the house over the last few weeks, and been cleaning up the garage. And but as I ran out of projects to do, I realized that one of the cool things that I had been doing for a while is is pen turning. Kind of a hobby that I picked up a couple of years ago, but I had to set it aside because I had some other stuff going on at the time. But now with this thing going on and most of my other cleanups and projects and things like that kind of coming to an end, I realized that I was looking for something to do. So I thought I would get back into it. Now, there are a number of places that sell pen turning kits, if you will. And every once in a while, if you go to like not a farmer's market because they wouldn't sell them there, but like a craft fair and things like that, you'll find them for sale. You'll find like really fancy looking pens and things of that nature for sale. And here's a couple of examples. Now, some of these pens, some of these are pens that I've made over the last few years. Some of them I give away as presents. Some of them I use or what have you. But these are all from kits. And what I've done is these are some acrylic ones, and you can see there the nice pattern from the blank that I got there, and that's kind of a nice rose gold. And then this one is using a nice wood blank that I picked up there. Another style of pen there, a nice comfort grip there. My daughter gave me this kit. It's a little hand grenade, so you can push that down to extend the tip there. Then you push the little arming lever and it retracts. That was kind of cool, and I used a tiger stripe acrylic blank on that one there. It was kind of a cool one. And this is a fountain pen, so that's another style of pen that you can make, and I turned the blanks there. So, and this is not a sponsored video by any means, but the company that I use, and there's a few of them out there, but the company that I get my kits from is called Penn Industries. You can go on their website and you can get their catalog, or you can just get stuff directly from them, and then you'll start getting their catalog. And they've got a lot of different pen types and wood turning projects using a lathe and what have you to do all sorts of cool stuff. And it's not just pens. There's even like salt and pepper shakers and all sorts of cool stuff that you can try. And the initial expenditure is, well, I guess it's relative, but it doesn't require like super fancy tools in that case. And so for the next few minutes, as I set up for another turning project, by the way, the kits are going to look something like this. And so I've got a new style here. It's called the Falcon ballpoint twist pen kit. And that's what it is. And it comes with all of the hardware that you need. There's a tube in there, there's the pen, there's the ink fill itself, and then there's the mechanism and all the whatever sort of fancy stuff that you might need to complete the pen. So that's one thing that you're going to have to buy. And then there's the blanks. And the blanks are either wood or they are made out of acrylic, and this is kind of a blended acrylic. This one's kind of cool. I'm a big fan of the military pattern, so this is a nice sort of woodland camo sort of look there. And so you'll need the pen kit, and then you'll need the blank. And then there's a few tools that you're going to need in order to get this done properly. And there's going to be instructions in there which tell you how to make it. So here's the instructions for the Falcon ballpoint twist pen kit. Now, we'll go ahead and talk about the actual tools that we can use. Now, one of the items that I use, or one of the items that I got in order to do this, is a lathe. And it doesn't have to be a fancy and expensive lathe. This one here is from Harbor Freight. And it's a basic, well, it says right there, mini woodworking lathe. And you'll see how it works. You'll need the centering rod there, and then there's going to be some bushings that you're going to put on there in order to make sure that you don't turn the blanks past where it'll look weird on the thing. So this prevents you, this will allow you to turn to the correct diameter for the kit. Now, A drill press is not required. You can use a regular drill if you're pretty good at drilling straight holes through the blank there, because you have to be able to drill down into that and not do it at an angle so that it goes straight in there. So a drill press is really handy in order to do that. And then to cut the blank to the correct length, I've got a bandsaw here. I like to use the bandsaw because, again, it's just it helps you cut in a nice straight line as you're cutting the blanks to the correct length. And yeah, so those are the kind of the three main pieces that I use on a regular basis. From there, there's a couple of other little smaller pieces that are kind of useful. There is a tool here that goes into your drill, either the drill press or into a regular drill, that allows you to smooth out the tops of the, and you'll see me use this as I make the pen itself. So there's that thing there. And again, you can get that from Penn Industries. And then each kit, or, you know, they're going to recommend the bushings that you're going to need, as well as the correct drill bit size to go, you know, to drill the hole into there. Another useful piece on there is a set of jaws designed to hold the blanks in the correct position for you to drill the holes into. Again, it holds it. It holds the blank in the correct position. So if I crank that open there, and then set the blank in there, it holds it at a nice angle, and then I can clamp it down, and then I can position it where it needs to be in order for me to do the drilling. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get started on this thing. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the brass tube here, and we are going to trim the blank to the length of the tube that we want it to be. Now, generally, they ask that you make maybe 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch on each side, so that if you make any mistakes or you cut it a little crooked, you have some room to kind of make up the material. So it's one of those measure twice, cut once sort of situations. So I always like to leave a little bit on each side there. And then we'll go ahead and mark where we want the bandsaw to go. And the reason that we do this is so that, again, we've got a little bit of leeway in case anything weird happens. So now we moved over to the bandsaw, and I've got the my blank all lined up the way I want it to be. Always wear ear and eye protection whenever you're working with tools, especially stuff like this, so you don't want to lose any fingers. You don't want to lose your eyeballs or anything like that. So let's go ahead and get this one cut. Blank is all set. Then once you've got your blank cut to size, you're going to take a straight edge, and you're going to go from corner to corner and mark the top with an X, and that's going to give you your relative center there. So we'll go ahead and do that, so that when you go into the drill press, you know what you're aiming for. There you go. So there's my X. I don't know if you can see that very well there. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and drill that. In this case, it's asking for a 3/8 inch drill bit. And so that's what we have in the press right now. All right, so we're going to go ahead and chuck this in here. Try to line it up as best we can. I like to start like right above it. Give myself a little bit of room there. Then we line it up, and we go ahead and drill our hole. There we go. Now, this particular one doesn't have a long enough throw, so I'm actually going to end up drilling about halfway through and then setting it up a little bit differently so I can get all the rest of the way through. All right, let's go ahead and see if we can do this. And by the way, do this in a well-ventilated room. You're never really sure. The acrylic ones especially are kind of stinky as the bit kind of does its thing. And as you can see some of the pieces kind of dropping out there, you can see why they recommend that you wear, obviously, eye protection. And I like to only do a little bit of a time and then pull out a little bit so that it cools off the bit a little bit and it gets rid of any pieces that might be stuck in the middle there. Because if you let the pieces stay in there, they'll actually start to fuse and you'll end up with a kind of a melted plastic blob in there. Alright, so that's as far as I can go there. Now I got to adjust a little bit. And we'll go ahead and clear some of this off. Alright, so now we got everything lined up again. Through. Notice how I withdraw the drill a little bit to make sure I'm not leaving all that plastic in there to turn into a melty mess. There you go. Punched all the way through. Now the next part is to take the brass tube that comes in the kit and apply some super glue to it, or you can get the kind of pen making glue that is pretty much the same thing as super glue, I believe, or pretty close to it. Now some of the kits, they come with, they're smooth and you have to actually take some sandpaper and rough them up. Some of the newer ones, they're kind of pre-roughed up so that you can kind of see the little texture on there, and that's going to help keep give the glue and the plastic something to adhere to in it. So in this case, what I'm doing now, because this is a gel rather than the kind of the more goopy, liquidy stuff, I'm just going to go ahead and use the chopstick to go ahead and almost like brush this on since it's so thick. But again, notice I'm using some pliers to make sure I don't get any on my hands and fingers. I should probably also be using gloves for this part. And there you go. And once you have enough on there, we'll go ahead and insert it into the blank. And so we've got the blank here. Got a little bit on my fingers. All right, so we got the blank there, and we're going to go ahead and insert that bad boy in. And I like to kind of swirl it around a little bit, make sure it sets well. Then we'll go ahead and tap that in there. And the glue on the ends will clean up nicely. So there you go. There's the tube in there, and we're going to let that set for a little while before we smooth it out and even the tops. All right, so off camera, well, I left off last night with the brass tube setting up there to make sure that it's well glued in there. And then just a minute ago off camera, I took the trimming head here to basically square up the ends and then get it trimmed down into down to the brass there, so that when I put it onto the lathe, I know where the bushings are going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up. And so again, this is my little Harbor Freight lathe here, and We'll go ahead and put this on the centering rod. And there's a number of bushings that you can use to get it centered the way that you want it. Then there's these little spacers as well. So I'll put a couple of those on there so that when I put the bushing on, this is again the main bushing here. Go ahead and slide that on there like that. Then I slide that on like so. Then I take the other side, get it in there nice and flush. Then I can go ahead and put the rest of the bushings on there so that it tightens down onto the item there. So now the blank is on there nice and tight. I might need to use a Allen head here in the end to get it on there nice and tight there. And then I put the freewheel, the centering spindle on there. So this thing spins along with the thing, along with the item there, so that it keeps it nice and steady there. So that piece is on. And now it's going to take a little while for me to get it down to the end there, and it's going to be kind of noisy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some headphones on, and I'll time lapse the rest so you don't have to watch the entire thing, which might take a little while to do. But from there, we're just going to go ahead and pick a chisel. And I've got one here that I like to use, and just basically when you use the chisel, you'll see me kind of using it like so as I'm going back and forth, and you'll see this thing turn from a square to a round piece. So yeah, this will be fun, and you'll see all the mess that this can make. So make sure you're doing this in a garage. That does generate some odor, so make sure it's well ventilated, and we'll go from there. So yeah, let's get started. So this is the part where you're going to want to make sure that you have your eye protection and your headphones on. There's a lot of noise, obviously, as you are chiseling away at this thing, as well as a lot of debris that gets generated as the pieces from the plastic and things and little shavings get thrown into the air as you are dragging the chisel back and forth across the blank and turning things down. At the same time, you're going to want to check your work every so often to make sure that you aren't cutting in too deep all the way down to the actual tube itself. So here you can see that I've got all the corners and stuff knocked off. Now, an interesting thing is that one of the things that Penn Industries has come out with is a couple of jigs and things like that will allow you to kind of take those things off before you get to this point, so that you can, there's a lot less work you have to do with the chisel. But as you can see here, it's starting to take shape. And when I get down to the bushings themselves, it'll be far enough, and then I'll start the sanding process. But yeah, there's probably better tools, better chisels I could be using for this. But this is what I have. I didn't want to go too expensive until I figured out whether or not there's something I really wanted to do on a regular basis. But they do work okay. It gets me down, down to the point where I want to be, fairly raw without having to go super expensive. But I'm sure there's better chisels out there that would allow me to do this a lot quicker and a lot less noisy and a lot less chattery. But yeah, so far so good. By the way, I do apologize for all the sniffles through the video itself. It is allergy season here in the Pacific Northwest, and so there's the sniffs that happen every once in a while. Sorry about that. All right, we are almost there. You can see that I've almost down to the bushing. I did a couple dry fits there to make sure I was kind of going in the right direction. Now here's where we want to be a little bit more careful. Now ultimately, in the center section, I can almost do whatever I want as far as contour and shape goes. I can put little ridges and bumps in there to kind of do something to kind of make it maybe have a little bit more grip or whatever. We'll see. Don't want to go too deep though, because now we're getting pretty close to the tube itself, and if you get too far and you actually cut down to the tube, well, now you've really got two pieces, and you have to run the risk of it kind of looking kind of weird. But yeah, so I got to be careful not to groove it in too deep there, and then maybe kind of turn those out, and then we'll get to the sanding part to polish it up. So again, as you're getting closer down towards the bushings themselves, you're going to want to make sure that you stop and check your work every once in a while. Make sure you don't go too far past the bushings, or that you create any grooves that will put a weak spot in the blank, being so close to the tube itself. So I think I got it down where I want it to be, pretty close there. So obviously some rough tool marks in there that we're going to sand out. Now I didn't get it right down to the bushing exactly, mainly because when I sand it, it's also going to take a little bit more material off there, and that'll kind of smooth it out a little bit closer to the bushings itself again. But now we're about ready for that. Now the next step is I have, and again you can do this with various degrees of sandpaper as well, different grits of sandpaper. But again, Penn Industries sells these pads, if you will. And you can see I've used these in a little bit, but there's still some life left in them. And again, as you go down, as you begin to sand it, all right, you'll start with a rougher grit, then you'll get down to a little bit finer, and as you work your way down in grits, it'll smooth it all out, and eventually it'll actually be fairly shiny. So I'm going to go ahead and prep up for that, and we'll get going. As you're polishing the blank with each of the successive pads, you're going to want to stop every once in a while, wet the thing so that you don't get a lot of heat buildup, again, so that you cause any sort of distortion or sort of overheating problems in the plastic or anything like that, or so you don't get excessive buildup, and so that you can wash some of the plastic off of the pad itself. And you don't need to over sand it either. It doesn't need to be super polished, although you can buy a separate polish as well. So after the first 4 pads, this is where we're at. You can start to see it's starting to shine up there quite a bit. A lot of those tool marks are out. I've just got a couple more, and we'll be ready to start setting the pieces, putting the pieces together. And as noted, I did leave just a little bit at the ends there, and it's not nearly as much as you kind of sand it down. The surface does again take away some material, so it's pretty much perfectly where I want it to be, enough to get some good grip on there. And you notice it's a little bit fatter at this end, so I'll probably use this as more towards the top of the pen, or maybe I'll use it as the bottom of the pen, and then I'll put the clip up on this end here, kind of going. So again, what I've done is I've taken a block that looks like this, right? And this is the blank that I got from Penn Industries there. And I put it on the lathe and turned it down to that little fella right there. So next we're going to go ahead and start putting all the pieces together. All right, so here we are with the parts of the Penn kit all laid out. You can see the brass tube and blank that I just assembled and turned down. There is the spring clip assembly. There is the end where the pen actually is going to be, the refill, the spring, and the twist mechanism that allows the pen to advance or retract when you're using. And the first thing it wants us to do is go ahead and press the clip into either end of the barrel. Again, this is kind of a universal, so you can kind of pick and choose which end you want to be the end there. Then we go ahead and fix the spring over the refill and drop it into the front end assembly, and screw the mechanism over the fill end. So looks like it's going to be fairly straightforward. Press the tube cap assembly over the front end assembly to the shoulder of the pen tip. All right, so let's go ahead and give that a try. Now, there are fancier vices and things like that you can use. Again, Penn Industries probably has all sorts of fun little presses and things like that to use, and maybe I'll get something like that in the future. But right now, I'm just using a standard vise, and what I'm doing is I line the vise jaws with tape and paper towels and things like that to prevent the metal from the vise jaws from chewing up or marking up or marring the pen assembly. So that'll probably be my next purchase if I'm going to keep doing this. You want to do this very carefully, because if you do it too hard, you'll also crack the now very thin blank around the tube. So you just want to make sure you do it very gently and get it right till it's flush without pressing any further than that. There we go. Right where I want it, not marked up. And there you have the end piece on there. And I guess we're supposed to screw on the mechanism over the fill end. So, in case you didn't see what I was doing there, I was doing it literally right behind the camera. So, you have the spring, you have the refill, that goes on there like so, and that goes into the end of the pen, and this is going to go on there like so. And then when that twists, it'll expand and retract the pen. Then you put this whole thing together here. It kind of tricked me there a little bit. This piece actually doesn't need to be pressed in. The twist mechanism actually presses into the end there, and in order to then change the fill, and I was kind of wondering how that was going to go, you simply unscrew this, and that comes out and you can actually replace the fill, but otherwise it stays in there. And you just turn it to activate the pen part. And there you go. One pen. So there's the pen in its extended state. It writes pretty smooth. The Orminators. Little happy face in there. Well, thank you for watching this this quarantine version of the Orminators, and yeah, I'll probably be making a few of these and maybe some of the other kind of wood turning projects here. I really like this one because it's got the gunmetal finish. I've got one of the chrome ones and the kind of brass looking ones as well. So I've got a set of 3, and you saw all those different blanks that I have. So yeah, this was kind of fun. I really like how smooth that turned out there as well, the way that polished up. So I think that looks pretty good. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Give it a share if you want to show people how to make pens. I hope this was educational and useful for you. Thank you very much for your time. And yeah, happy times.